Hello fellow dicers, today I'm going to be comparing Darktide and Spacemarine 2. Let's get straight into the video. So firstly we're going to look at Darktide. Now I'm going to be doing a bit on Darktide then the equivalent in Spacemarine 2. This is not going to be a which is better, this is just going to be a comparison and telling you what differences there are. So in Darktide, you have a specific area of your ship that you go to buy cosmetics. You then equip them from your character menu. Now, there are various different cosmetics. You have your main armor, you have helmets, you have basically pants, which includes the boots, and you have backpacks, but they do vary greatly in what they look like. Now, some of them you earn as mission rewards, some of them you earn as standing rewards, so basically as your trust level goes up, and some of them you can actually unlock via various different methods, such as I can't remember quite what it's called, but it's basically like a mastery rank kind of system. So it's a relatively good system. It's not over the top, but you can also, as it shows here, buy some of them using in-game currency, which is really nice. Now, if we go over to Spacemarine 2, it's a I'm going to say a very similar system. You have a specific area of the ship to go to again, but here you basically not only change the look of your equipment, but you can buy perks for your weapons. You can gain mastery for your weapons and basically select what they look like. You can then do the same for your armor. So as you can see, there's different types of weapons. They actually have different damage stats and everything, so this is more specifically armoring. But customization is where it becomes very similar. So you basically have a set number of armor points that you can customize. You can customize them in various different ways, and you unlock those customizations in different manners. So some of them will be completing a number of missions in operations, for example, or maybe even PvP, and then there are others which you unlock by spending it in-game currency to unlock a certain chapter's heraldry, I'm going to say. So it's their colour scheme, their iconography, and their armour. So let's go on to starting a mission. Now, in Darktide, you have a very large ship to walk around, if I'm being honest, and in the centre of the ship, there is this area here. Now, it's called Mission Terminal, which isn't very canon. It should either be called Cogitator or Strategium. It is actually called the Strategium when they're talking over the Vox, but it does say Mission Terminal on the side, which is a little bit disappointing. There are lots of different missions to select from. I can't specifically see anywhere to find PvP versions. If we go into Spacemarine 2, however, we have this little console right in the hangar bay, and we have three specific requirements, or three specific types. We have operations, where there's lots of different types of missions. These are the co-op kind of one-off missions. We then have the campaign, where you can still play co-op, but these are story-driven, and you have to play as Lieutenant Titus, I should say. And it is Lieutenant, not Lieutenant, for those Americans out there. And then we also have PvP Eternal War, which just allows you to do quick matches and then select a mode. Now let's go into the actual getting ready for a mission. So readying for a mission in Darktide is very much a case of looking at your character, selecting when you're ready, and then it takes you into this kind of mission loading screen where it's talking in the background, and you can see all the different players that are with you. This, I believe, started with Avengers game, where you were in the back of the ship there as well, and it was very, very similar. And at the start of the mission you have this kind of walking towards you. Now in Spacemarine 2 it's very similar. You basically ready yourself by going into a specific area on the map, you get in your ship which then flies off, and then you get in this interior loading screen where you're sitting in the ship. Difference here is there's no talking, but there is that banner in the background which just tells you your mission objectives and gives you a bit of an overview. So, to be perfectly honest, there's nothing one over the other. They're very similar. You are looking at the other players as well in both of them. The difference is this is 3-player, the other one is 4-player. Now once we get into the mission, this is where it does differ. So Darktide is a first person, I'm going to say melee shooter, simply because you can choose to be melee, but each character also has a ranged weapon as well. It's actually very similar to Space Marine, but we will get into that. Now, the main difference here is obviously this is set in a hive world, so a hive city on a world. So it's very industrial in that respect, whereas it's very different when you go to Space Marine. The other main difference is this is first person and Space Marine 2 isn't. The actual gameplay in this is really fun. If ever you've played Vermintide, you kind of know what to expect because it's the same developer and I would say the same engine, but it's possibly not, but it feels like it. This is a lot smoother and a lot slicker, but of course this is the third game they've made in a similar style now. So they had Vermintide, Vermintide 2, and now they've got Darktide. So yeah, it really is a good example of this type of game. Now, as with Vermintide, you do have masses of enemies to fight. In certain areas you will get literally mobbed by a lot of enemies, and they really do hurt. Even the lowest enemy really does hurt at the beginning. So it's good to understand that, so you don't go in thinking, oh, I'm a huge ogre and I'm really hard, and then finding that when you get surrounded by 6 or 7 enemies, you are all of a sudden in trouble. Now the melee combat is quite satisfying, we know that from Vermintide 2, but the actual ranged combat is also really good, which did surprise me, but it's overall a really nice feeling game to play. The missions are relatively varied, but I've only played a few so far, so I couldn't tell you 100%. Now, if we switch to Space Marine 2, it's a lot darker, as you can tell. There are some missions in the light, but it's a lot grimier and darker just in general. And I just mean the tone of it, not just the colour scheme. The melee combat is extremely satisfying again. It feels more action orientated, if I'm being honest, which is a bit odd to say as the other one is a first person action game as well. But this one, I don't know, maybe it's because you're playing as a Space Marine and you know you get that power trip, but just some of the finishing moves like that where you tear the head off an enemy and then kick the corpse away, I don't know, it just feels really good to me. Graphically both are really nice. I couldn't say either way which one I prefer. They're both exceptionally nice. But as I say, this is third person, and Darktide is first person, so they are a very different genre. I suppose realistically the way to choose between the two is which viewpoint do you prefer, because realistically I would say from a gameplay perspective they both have a place in your game library. The only decision I suppose is if you can't afford both, which one to go for, and I would say that really does come down to, do you prefer first person or third person? So again, both of these are being played on PlayStation 5 Pro, so that might have an impact on your experience, so I should have said that at the beginning. But in reality, really nice to play. This is really slick. You can see that even moving the screen, there's no sort of blurring or judder. It's extremely slick. The same as Darktide, to be perfectly honest. Both are an extremely nice experience to play. And both, as I say, have their own little benefits and drawbacks. So once you had finished a mission, obviously the all-important rewards. So at the end of missions in Darktide, you have a nice little cutscene of what happens after you've finished the mission. That one, obviously, the Imperial Guard landed. You have kind of an overview just of your level, and then the rewards that you got, whether that be the experience, which is crawling across the bottom of the screen, any bonuses that you actually won. So we've got reward in experience, a weapon's unlocked, again another weapon unlocked, and it does go through a number of different things. So we've got currency, for example, and some other stuff, and the Emperor's Gift is actually a weapon that I have been given, and then some weapon mastery points as well. Now moving over to Space Marine 2, we have something very similar. So we have a cutscene where basically we see ourselves taking off and flying back into space towards our ship, and it then comes up with the lovely victory splash screen. Now I did have to cut a bit out the centre of this, because one thing I would say about Space Marine over Darktide is it takes a lot longer to load. I don't know why that is, but it does. It takes a lot longer to load. So I have had to cut quite a bit of that out. I would say probably 30-40 seconds worth. And it's still longer than the Darktide version. So just bear that in mind as well if you don't like waiting around. But again, this one puts you back in your ship and then gives you your victory screen, and it tells you all of the stages you completed and the experience you got. And then it gives you an overview of how you did against your fellow players. Now, obviously I did terribly because the only thing I got was more special kills than the other, but that actually does give you bonuses. So the better you perform, the better you get rewarded. And it gives you some extra stuff and some weapon and everything experience as well. So I suppose I should give you an overview of what is beneficial of each, and I suppose what differences there might be and what they do really well. So I'm going to do this bit to a backdrop of Space Marine combat, simply because I have more of that saved, which is probably a poor excuse, but there we go. So what can you expect? I mean, I think I've given a relatively broad overview of both. I haven't gone into huge details, but there's not really that much to pick from each other. If you want to feel the power trip of being a Space Marine, obviously Space Marine 2 is the game to pick if you can only get one. If you prefer third-person combat, again, Space Marine is the one to go for, because in reality, it's the best selection for third-person combat. I am quite a big lover of third-person combat games. I liked Godfall, etc. So it really does play nicely. And of course, when you're shooting your guns, it feels just as good as when you're using melee. Now, when it comes to the other side of the coin, if you prefer first person, obviously it goes without saying you're not going to be disappointed with the Darktide. It is a really good game, and it appears they have fixed a load of the bugs that which did plague the Xbox and PC release. The other thing to say is, because Darktide is the third game from the same studio in the same genre, I'm going to say, although obviously one's Warhammer, the other one's 40k. Because it is the third game in that genre, they have really nailed it down. So I would say now, at least on PlayStation 5, it runs really smoothly. It's really nice to play. It feels polished. And although Space Marine 2 also feels polished, there are still more bugs in Space Marine 2, I feel. Or there are more that I have experienced, I should say. Now, that's not to say Space Marine 2 is bad, and I would say if you can get both, I really would, because they are both, I would say, a shining example of the type of game they want to be. Both are no-nonsense games. There's no hidden agendas or political positions or anything like that in them. They are just fun to play. Kill some heretics, kill some enemies, kill some demons, whatever they might be, and just really enjoy yourself playing it. If you're a Warhammer 40k fan, then both are just exceptional choices, and like I have said, if you do have the cash, really do go for both, because they are a different experience and they are both well worth your time. So that's my take on it. Get both, and if you can't afford to, just go with the genre you prefer, whether it's third person or whether it's first person. That really is as simple as it is. Anyway guys, I'm going to leave the video there. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you have enjoyed the video and if you found it useful, informative or whatever, please make sure you do click the like button. Subscribe if you are new to the channel, or if you are returning but haven't yet subscribed. And please do leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you like this type of video where I just tell you what each does different to the other and don't necessarily give a this one is better result? To be honest, I do have that type of feeling quite often, that none of them are better than the others. They're just different. So I would definitely like to do more videos like this. And of course, last but not least, please do share the video with your friends so we can get the channel out to more people. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. You all take care. Bye for now.